Hello and welcome to the Mariana Dalto Show, the podcast where small business owners share their stories, insights, and strategies for success. I'm your host, Mariana Dalto, and our guest today is Dr. Katrina. She's an award-winning pediatric gastroenterologist, international best-selling author, and a founder of Faithful to Fitness, a nonprofit to fight childhood obesity. Welcome, Dr. Katrina, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Happy to have you. So tell us a little bit about your background, about what the type of work you do and how you help people.
So I'm a pediatric gastroenterologist based in Loves Park, Illinois. I was in traditional medicine until July 2020. And since February of 2021, I do primarily telemedicine consultations. I'm licensed in 7 states, so I'm able to help patients outside of Illinois, especially in the last 3.5 years. I also have the nonprofit, as you mentioned, Faithful to Fitness, that I formed in November of 2014. So it's going almost 10 years, and that is focused on childhood obesity, and it really is community-based. It's not specific to my hospital or clinic, and it invites many partners in the community to make a difference in children's health.
Okay, excellent. And I know in prior conversations that we had, you mentioned that you also do speaking engagements.
I do.
And you talk about generosity. And can you please expand a little bit on that topic?
Generosity is really a key to almost everything that I do. I grew up as a child of immigrants, of parents who escaped communist Vietnam in 1975. And so I grew up in poverty and had to figure out how to, find the right mentorships to help me and my siblings to be successful. But neither of my parents graduated high school in their own country. And so I couldn't really reach out to them to say, I want to do this. How do I get there? So really, I strive to go from a background of poverty to achieving generosity, but using that generosity to help make an impact in other people's lives to help them achieve it as well.
So when you talk about generosity, I think we talked about this in the past, but it's not just about financial giving, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think that the first focus is time, because time is something all of us have the same amount of time every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I think the greatest impact we can make in the world is how we use our time. The second part of generosity is talent. So a lot of people think, oh, I only have one talent. But many of us have different talents. Some are used to make an income, and some are used to make an impact. And we also can use those talents in different situations and different parts of our life where we feel called to use the talent for that purpose. So treasure is the third part of generosity, which for me, it should be the third emphasis, not the primary. So we can actually make an impact today. We don't have to wait till we're making 6 figures or more to be generous, mainly focused on time and talent in the right circumstances with the right situations. Yes.
Can you share a story for people to maybe think further on how they can best help that way, like maybe someone else's experience on the act of generosity, whether it was big or small, so then they can kind of relate, and it could be within their life or career or whatever, right?
Yes. So let me talk about, say, my nonprofit. I have a dietitian who works at the hospital where I used to work, and she gets paid as a dietitian to consult for children and adults for various conditions, related to diabetes or cancer, heart disease, obesity, for instance. But she volunteers her time with my nonprofit to provide services for patients and their parents who struggle with obesity-related health problems. And many of these patients and families are unable to access a dietitian because their insurance won't cover that, and they can't afford the cost of a dietitian. So she gets paid to do the exact same thing she's doing, but she also contributes time to reach out to people who are unable to afford her services. So that's one way to not only use time, but talent in a very special way to be generous.
And that's how the people can help with the nonprofits, right? Because they can
Yes.
bring, that's their generosity to those nonprofits organizations, and it could be to you, the one that you work with, or any other ones, right?
Yeah, and then for me as a doctor, currently for the last 3.5 years, I work in my Catholic Doctor telehealth group. So in almost 200 of us in the group, we are offered the opportunity from our CEO to individualize our care. To say for some patients who may not have, like not in network with us for the insurance, but they can't afford maybe the fee that would cost them to see us for telehealth and a new patient visit. So we can actually charge them less based on their ability to pay. So we will not deny the ability to help them based on whether they can pay. So again, giving our talent and our time and worrying less about treasure, because eventually bringing the joy of giving is what makes the biggest difference for the patients we take care of.
So what role does generosity play in empowering communities and future generations?
I think I'll give an example with relation to my nonprofit work on childhood obesity. Some of the partners that I invite to be part of the nonprofit are contributing their treasure by saying, let's say a gym. A gym says, I have a gym, there's space, there's fitness instructors, but some people can't afford it, especially the clientele that I serve. So what do? They said, well, you're a nonprofit. We'd like to partner with you to make an impact on children's health and then also their parents. So they donate a fitness instructor 1 hour every Saturday to teach a group fitness class that is designed specifically for the needs of the clientele that I serve. And also the space, like a studio space that is not used after a certain time on a Saturday. And they don't charge a fee. They don't require those patients and their parents to have a membership. So that's a way to donate the treasure, the space, not charging a fee, and giving the talent of a fitness instructor. And for the past almost 10 years, they always tell me, thank you so much for including us in the journey to make an impact on children's health. So how often does a gym manager or a gym can say that they made an impact along with a doctor and a dietitian and healthcare volunteers directly or indirectly on the health of the community? So that's a beautiful example. Another example would be like a grocery store that I'm partnered with, which is Meijer in Rockford. So they give us gift cards so that we can use it for shopping groceries are healthy to include in our meal prep classes. We also take kids 2 or 3 times a year to do a grocery store tour with a dietitian at the Meijer, so they can learn how to shop healthy on a budget, how to read labels, and how to learn about portion sizes, and just not be afraid to cook healthy on a budget and shop healthy on a budget that does not cost more to eat healthy. So again, donating the treasure and allowing us to hold those grocery store tours and education, nutrition courses, but that's very interactive within their own space.
That's great because, some people might not really realize how much they can help or donate their time and it's all about education, right? Trying to figure out ways to find, the right nonprofits or organizations that they can help.
And what I find is there are organizations and individuals, companies, small businesses out there that want to make an impact. And it's like they don't know where to start, or who to reach out to. And I'm always amazed when people say, how can we help? Thank goodness, you're asking us, because we've been thinking about how can we make a difference. And a lot of times when you are afraid to go ask because you're thinking, oh, you're doing me a favor. But actually, if you change it around and say, I'm inviting you into a process where it's a privilege to be part of something you normally wouldn't be invited to be part of.
So what the resources or what suggestions do you have for those business owners that might want to help, but they're not really in Illinois and they don't know really how to start the process? What are the first steps?
Yeah, I think that it's important to always seek out people when you have a proposal, to hear them say these words, which is not what's in it for me, but how can I help you? So just 5 words that makes a difference between who you choose to be a partner in your journey and who is looking out for only themselves versus making a greater impact in the community. So I learned that very early when I was choosing gym partners, because it was probably the most difficult thing. Because I was looking for like, how many people can we bring in for membership? But really, that shouldn't be the goal, right? If you're in a health care kind of business, it should be like, how many people can we help in their health journey? And I was very fortunate to find just the right gym, for the last almost 10 years that's their focus, and seeing their gratitude to be involved and be invited is what's helped us really build on that relationship.
That's great. And then now let's shift a little bit on the other topic that you typically use for speaking engagements, which is empowering women through mentorship and networking. Tell us a little bit about the importance of mentorship and how that can be transformative for people.
Well, mentorship has always been important to me. Like I said, growing up with family members who I couldn't look up to what I wanted to do. So I was constantly seeking mentorship outside of my family, in healthcare in particular, but certainly as a teenager, just learning basic skills, how to communicate with people, how to use like technology, computer softwares, how to write a resume, how to write a letter, how to answer a phone call, how to use the typewriter or a computer, Excel, Word, those different things I learned as a teenager, working in the summer jobs. And it's amazing how those skills that I didn't think, like, wow, if I want to be a doctor in the future, which I wasn't even thinking about that, how that actually is helping me to be more efficient right now. Along the way in healthcare, many doctors that I had as mentors, but I also realized that they could guide me on how to get to what they're doing in their career, like their specialty. But I also had to figure out my own way to get there. There's steps to it, but there's also an art to achieving that. Mentorship is both a good way to look at positive role models, but also people that you may not want to be like that, right? So it's both positive and negative. So I've also encountered people I've worked with in leadership and, as a manager or boss, where I'm like, I want to treat people differently. I want to be a servant leader, right? I want to see like, how can I help people as a leader, not like, what can they do for me? So those are the things I've learned in terms of mentorship. As far as empowering women, in the past, when I was in my 20s, I always thought, oh, I just want to do things on my own and achieve things on my own. But as I got more and more into my training and also in my career as a physician, and authoring and speaking, I realized that networking and working with other people and writing books together and speaking at the same events and teaching each other like wisdom, in our own career that can be applied to other people's career paths as well. So, don't isolate yourself, really learn from other people, even if they're in a different career path, you can learn their skills in business or things that worked for them and things that didn't. And I think you can also share your wisdom in different audiences and different situations. So the same story in a different setting can be very helpful to people that you wouldn't otherwise think would be impactful.
Yeah, I mean, just the communication piece, like don't isolate yourself, communicate, relate, network. It's interesting. I was just talking with my daughter, and they're already in the early, early third, fourth grade. They start teaching them how to network, how to see, how to look at people in the eye, and say their names. And I'm like, I don't remember learning that when I was a kid, but early on now, the teachers and the schools are teaching them to, have better relationships, how to network, how to care about, the other person, right?
Yeah, and the other thing, like you said, remembering names, and responding to messages with a name. So instead of just saying, to a text or an email, yes or no, or I got this and this, like you always respond with first acknowledging the other person's name, because that's really so important, to be recognized as like this person you're giving full attention to. versus just another email or another text you're responding to. So
I don't know where I learned this, but I remember someone said to me, or maybe I read it, I can't remember, but like when you say someone else's name, it's music in their ears because you're like really mentioning their, their name. So it makes an impact when you say Dr. Katrina than just talking without the name.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I read it from Dale Carnegie too, how important the name is to someone and learning to, say their name correctly and spell it correctly, that kind of thing. So
yeah, that's true. So what are some practical ways women or people in general can start building networks that will help them grow, personally and professionally? Because some people are like shy and they don't know how to start or shift a little bit their way of being.
See, I think in my 20s and 30s, I was very like not social, right? I was always like, I have all these goals I have to accomplish. I don't have time. But I think in the past, like say 5 years in particular, virtual meetings are really one way to just show up. Don't worry about what you're going to say. Just show up and listen and learn and being open to ideas and doing things differently, maybe getting out of your comfort zone. Sometimes at virtual meetings, like you break out into small groups and somebody asks you, oh, you have 2 minutes to say something. And maybe you're not someone that likes to speak, but just show up and do your best. Maybe you can't speak in 2 minutes, say something in 30 seconds, but show up and introduce yourself. You will be amazed at the people that are showing up looking for what you offer. Right. And those are things I've learned. Start with virtual meetings if you're uncomfortable being in person and go from the virtual, make those connections. And then you'll find that maybe many of those people you meet virtually are actually in your neighborhood or in your city, and they have little things that may interest you. I'll give another example. Like I have done book signings, and I find out there's a book club in the neighborhood, and now they want me to come and speak about my book at their book club. Or an author that's supporting other women authors that came to support me because she found out at Barnes and Noble. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, you didn't think you were writing a book for this genre, but they don't care about the genre. They care about supporting you as a women author. So those are just some like little examples, just stepping out of your comfort zone, and you'll be amazed at the people that are there to support what you're doing.
Yeah, and even going back to the online meetings, and if you start that way, sometimes they force you to put in small groups, and that's actually better because then you might get overwhelmed if you are with 20 people in a meeting. But if you have 4, 3, 4, 5, then it's easier to talk, and it's not as overwhelmed for people who are shy or don't know how to connect.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is sometimes people are finding people who have like things they have in common. And if you're comfortable with starting with that, then start with that. And then start branching out to, more diverse groups that you're looking for tips on ways of doing things that are different from people you're comfortable with. Yeah.
Okay. So now I wanted to ask you personally, looking back at your career and your nonprofit work, what's the most satisfying moment that you have experienced so far?
I would say that a lot of it boils down to stories that patients have shared with me. Sometimes they will write an actual review about the interaction they had with me, and sometimes they will send me an email and thanking me for that experience. So, for example, recently, probably in the last year, I had a patient who reached out to me for telehealth, and I was the 4th pediatric GI doctor. And she had seen 3 other in the same state in 3 different cities in person. So the first time that she saw a GI doctor that was not in person and out of state. And when she first reached out, it was like, her child's condition was not really something in my expertise, but I didn't look at that as something that, prevented me from caring for her. I wanted to find out, okay, maybe I cannot help the genetic condition that the child is born in, but I can still help with the GI issue. And so in the end, after, gosh, I think I saw him when he was about 6 months, and now he's 19 months. And basically what she told me, that the difference that allowed her to keep seeing me, even virtually, is that I was the first doctor that did not tell her there's nothing more I can do for you.
Wow, that's big.
That's big. And it just like, I was teary-eyed just to get that message the second thing she says that you're the first person that did not tell me you only have this much time with me, but you allowed me to pick how long of an appointment I needed to have with you. And then also to listen to what her concern and her goals are for her child, not like coming in with an agenda of this is my plan. So those are like three things that was like, wow, one patient. And it was like the time I spent with her, like most of our visits were a minimum of 60 minutes up to 90 minutes. And virtual. And so most people have this impression like, oh, virtual visit, how much can you do? But being the fact that you're in tune and giving them the full attention and letting them decide like how much time they can have with you is what made them feel that it was individualized care. It was holistic. You're a good listener. You gave good eye contact, and you were actually listening to what their concerns are, not what you want to do for them. So that was so impactful. And then recently, probably in the last month, I had a patient who wasn't sure. Her insurance was saying like, I don't know if your insurance will cover a telehealth visit with me, because even though it's the same insurance, like the service had required like a brick and mortar building. So they weren't used to having a virtual setting for a doctor. So she said, but I was recommended to her for her daughter by a friend of hers who had met me at an event and got my card. So she like really wanted to see me. So I ended up seeing her and just charging her $10 for a 90-minute visit. And in the end, she wrote me a beautiful review saying how much she appreciated the fact that I responded to her emails and her messages. And she wrote in the review, like, this is a new level of care I have never experienced in my life. And I thought, wow, that 90 minutes, it's not about how much I made off of a 90-minute visit. It's the fact that I got this beautiful review and she was willing to share that, and also being the marketing tool for me for future patients. Because the reason why she wanted to write the review, because she wanted other people to know about my services.
That is so nice.
Those are just some stories where if you give the time and use your talent to bring joy and give with the virtue of generosity, everything else, the treasures will be provided if your focus is on providing quality care and doing the best and really like, under promising, but over delivering. And I think that's really important.
That is really important. I agree with you. I think you had a resource that you wanted to share with people, the 3 steps to a healthier you. Can you explain what that is so then people can find it in the show notes when I put it there?
Yeah, and it relates to my passion for childhood obesity intervention, which actually, if you help the child, it can help the adults and the family as well. So if you go to my website, mdkatrina.com, you can actually download that resource as a PDF document. It gives you the first 3 steps you can take, making a change in your lifestyle, your diet, physical activity, which will impact your overall health, and in terms of prevention of obesity, which obesity is related to many other chronic health conditions, such as type 2 diabetes and fatty liver disease.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I will put the resource in the show notes so people can access to it. Thank you so much, Dr. Katrina, for sharing your incredible journey and the way you are impacting lives with your generosity, the way you empower people. I really appreciate like being so generous to my audience to bring that up and bring the opportunity for people to listen and to be aware what they can do to help, right? So Thank you for doing that.
No, thank you. I think that it's a topic that most people don't think, I can build a business or, business concepts around it. But if you start with giving, and eventually you will receive, maybe not for the same people and audience you're giving to, but you will be blessed eventually. Everything comes around. So
that's true. Everything comes around. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Katrina, for joining us today. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Again, I will add all Dr. Katrina's information in the show notes if you want to reach out to her and learn more about her and her nonprofit and everything. And if you enjoy this episode, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. We would love to hear from you. Thank you, Dr. Katrina, again.
Thank you.
See you next time.